Hi everyone and welcome to This Is Why We Fight. I'm Jo.
And I'm Jordan.
Good evening. We've got an interesting one today. As you know, we're constantly talking about tyranny and the ways that we're being compelled, coerced into doing things that we don't want to. And not just that we don't want to, but that we feel are unnecessary. So tonight we want to focus on something slightly different. And it comes back down to COVID and specifically COVID marshals. What do you think about COVID marshals, Jordan?
Oh, they're my favourite. There is a wonderful phrase for them in the thing we're going to be reading through that I just love.
Well, we'll definitely read that one out.
This is slightly less tyrannical than usual, I feel, but it's a different sort of tyranny. It's a soft tyranny.
Yes.
It's making you pay for your own oppression, as opposed to previous examples where they were directly manipulating you and just being dastardly little vultures.
Yes.
I wouldn't even
Okay.
call them dastardly, to be honest with you. It gives Dick Dastardly a bad name.
Yeah,
I take that back.
they're just evil. They're
Yeah, they're just
evil.
vultures. There you go.
Right, so let's have a look anyway. So this story came to our attention because, as you can see from the headline, all indications seem to lead to the fact that lockdown is going to end in its entirety in June, on the 21st of June, in fact. And yet, as you can see from the headline, there are many, many councils looking to hire COVID marshals and pay for them, offer them contracts until 2023. So let's have a look through the article and let's see what they've got to say for themselves. Okay, so despite the UK having one of the best vaccine programmes, yawn, in the world, some councils are advertising for jobs which may last until 2023, sparking anger from British taxpayers. Amid the possibility of wasting taxpayer cash as the UK comes out of lockdown, Britain's labelled the plans as ludicrous across social media. One person said on Twitter, "I'd be truly embarrassed if I had that kind of job." We agree. What a waste of taxpayer money. I'm going to let Jordan read the next one out because it's his favourite comment.
Another said, "Oh goody, jumped up COVID wombles full of their own self-importance."
I love that so much. COVID wombles. You people, you COVID marshals, wombles, whatever you want to call yourselves, are a disgrace. You are collaborators. You are being paid to oppress everyone else. Shame on you.
Some of them are being paid a hell of a lot of money from what we've seen.
Yes.
Because we've gone and we've looked up these jobs before, just out of pure interest, like how much are these people being paid. We expected them to be minimum wage, maybe a little bit above. Some of them aren't. The managers of the COVID marshals are on one heck of a frigging salary.
Yeah, but they averaged between sort of £8 and £10 a day, didn't they? There was one at £30 a day.
An hour.
Sorry, £30 an hour. I do apologise. Yeah,
£8 a day.
Not a day. Although that's all you deserve. In fact, you deserve nothing. You
deserve less.
You dirty rotten scoundrels, you. But yeah, so £8 to £10 an hour, £30 an hour. Do we find another one for something like 30 grand a year? Or am I?
I'm trying to remember the highest one we've seen. I think it was 34,000.
So yeah.
And that was for. That was like the one rung above the COVID marshals that are going to be going off into shops and telling people how to comply. It was for their manager, but it wasn't a terribly high up position.
Yeah, and let's not pretend this is something it's not. These people have been hired to ensure the rest of us comply with the rules being imposed on us. And these people are being paid to impact our freedom. Judases, if you want to really call it what it is. Traitors. Helping the government tyrannise the people. Disgusting. Anyway, going back to the comments. A third person on social media said, any know, there must be anyone know why councils need COVID marshals after lockdown date ends? And a fool said, but we are coming out of lockdown, right? Well, that's the magic question, isn't it? Are we coming out of lockdown? I mean, who knows? There have been so many U-turns The lockdown in and of itself has been so incredibly harmful. What do you think will happen if we don't come out of lockdown this summer?
I think they'll let us out and then put us back in.
Look at that language you've just used.
Yeah, I know, let us back in. They're doing a wonderful job on the language. I've seen a number of articles over the last couple of days where the language has been twisted and manipulated to such an extent. People are looking at going into just normal business conferences as some sort of experiment.
Yeah.
I sent you that article. I'm actually going to read a quote from it.
Yeah, please do.
Just so people can get a gist of how much they've messed with people's mind. This is a quote from an article on the BBC. It was a Liverpool host pioneering mask-free business conference. Notice having a mask-free business conference is pioneering. Anyway, a quote from it. It genuinely feels like an experiment, says Wayne Hemingworth, the designer and businessman who organised the Good Business Festival. Are people going to take their masks off? Are they going to keep them on? You're allowed to shake hands.
That's amazing. That's the kind of behaviour that slaves engage with. All these questions. Will people behave like human beings or slaves? I wonder.
Will people be normal? Or will people be weird? That's really what he's asking. Seemingly, people are going to continue being weird.
Well, that's a good way to put it. If you're not behaving like a normal person, you are, by default, weird. Abnormal.
Yeah. And not shaking hands with somebody, that's a weird thing.
It flies in the face of everything that we have come to accept as part of our identity as modern people.
Mm-hmm.
And even between men and women, if you go for a job interview, invariably there will be a handshake either at the start and at the end or both. At the start or the end or both. And it's just something we've come to accept as a normal part of life. The handshaking notwithstanding, though, there's obviously far worse ramifications for lack of contact. But it comes back again to this idea that the new normal is insidious. This man's language, where he's asking all these questions like, what will people do? It's just amazing. It's amazing how quickly everything we've considered normal has been just undermined.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have to ask those questions because we just don't know if people have got a spine anymore, or if they're just going to be the sheep that they are and just do as they're told. And we'll take everything they're dishing out because we want to get back to normal. There will never be normal if you keep taking what they're dishing out, but you can't tell people, unfortunately.
Which is partly where the COVID marshals... Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned why they dressed in blue. Maybe it's to make them stand out from the police. Is it just the City of Westminster marshals that are dressed in blue, or is that all of them, do you know?
I have no idea. I've never seen one of these people.
State of it, though. I mean, she's a bit porky, isn't she?
Oh, bloody hell, I didn't realise I was a woman.
She's been to Greg's. I mean, talk about the stereotype with authority and donuts. Her belly looks a bit donutty.
I'm looking at that copper there on the left, and to be honest, look at that.
A bit of a beer belly going on there, I've got to say.
Just over here.
You're skinny, you're a bit in the middle. You've got a little bit of pork going on there. You definitely have, love.
I'm just saying, those two lads at the back are in the famine, and I think we know who's caused it.
Absolutely. Moving on.
As I was going to say, with these COVID marshals, seemingly what they do is they go around to businesses and they assist shop owners in complying. Or, sorry, they don't assist them in complying. They assist them in...
enforcing compliance.
Yeah, in running their shop in a COVID...
friendly
way.
So basically, they're helping them to be oppressed.
Yes, COVID marshals are basically like the people that the food inspectors would send round. but these are going around to every business.
So what these people basically are, apart from being dirty Judas rats, they are government spies.
Pretty much, because as soon as they see something people don't like, as soon as they see something they don't like, they're going to be on to the coppers and saying, hey, can you come round here and issue a fine, please? And then how much influence are these people going to have over small shops?
You see it all the
potential
time
for
with
corruption
collaborators.
there is quite incredible, really.
Of course. I tell you what I can see coming up is some kind of protection racket, honestly.
Exactly.
You know, if you pay me, I don't know, a few £100, I won't tell the police that you broke this rule and that rule. I won't report you. And what if they start asking for sexual favours or helping themselves to stock? Or, I don't know, the potential for corruption here, for abusing this, is massive.
Yeah, because it is always going to be their word against your word.
Yeah.
And their word is the only one that matters.
Well, they're government stooges, so of course they're going to be believed if it's a case of he said, she said. This is potentially a massive abuse of power, and these aren't people who have gone through training and have made an oath to serve and protect. These are just regular people who've had, I don't know, 3-4 weeks of training. These are the kind of people who would apply for jobs as traffic wardens because they love lording it over people. And this tiny little bit of power is going to go to their head. And then they're not only going to be Judas rats and government informants, what they're going to be is corrupt little Hitlers walking around, lording it over everyone else and making life pretty much miserable for anyone who doesn't do what they say. And if any of these people have a personal grudge with you, you're in trouble. Because they're not bound by any rules of engagement like other institutions are.
These are the sort of people that would have been rejected for being traffic wardens.
These are the sort of people who got rejected from the police force because they didn't pass the psych test. Just saying.
Anyway, moving on.
Of course, those are generalisations. We're not saying every COVID marshal is a complete nutter, but they are all government informants, and that is indisputable.
No. I think at the very least we can all say that the people who are going to become COVID marshals are not the sort of people that you'd be inviting around for Christmas.
Or
this
anything.
is why they're having to pay them so much. Like earlier on, you said £8 to £10 an hour. I don't remember seeing many of them on 8. I do remember seeing a heck of a lot of them on 12 to 15 an hour.
Oh, no, I was going for the lowest amount we could find compared to the highest.
On average, certainly over £10 an hour. They're having to pay these people a lot because they know that this is a very unpopular job. The sort of people taking these jobs are either incredibly, incredibly desperate or just busybodies.
Well, these are going to be life's outcasts, aren't they? The freaks and the weirdos, the people that don't have any friends, the people who aren't popular, and there's going to be a lifetime of grudges with many of these people, and it's all going to play out whilst they're in authority. And that's going to be bad news for whoever they decide to victimise.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, yes, you're right. It's the equivalent of becoming a traffic warden or a bailiff. And let's not forget the division that this lockdown etiquette has caused within families. These people are literally collaborators. You think for the money they're on, they won't shop their own families or friends?
I'm just trying to think if originally when this COVID marshal idea came about, it came about because they wanted COVID marshals to go stand around in parks and make sure people were wearing their masks and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
It's obviously failed, or doing it in that incarnation obviously failed. It's interesting how they've stuck with the word marshal.
Yeah, well, they were despised.
Yeah, why didn't they just completely change it? Because they've gone from being effectively police community support officers, but specifically for COVID-related things.
Because it's another psyop. They want you to know.
They want you to know what?
They want you to know that these people you despise are going to have power over you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
I wonder if they did it because they have existing COVID marshals and they're now what's the word I'm looking for here? Like the existing COVID marshals, they had such a rough time of it last year, with people allegedly abusing them because they're being COVID marshals and nobody likes them. Now they've got a bit of a chip on their shoulder, and now they're the ones actually enforcing the law. They actually have some bite to their bark.
Maybe. Depends what powers they're given, doesn't it, really? But they are still government informants, and if you know someone who becomes a COVID marshal, just be very, very careful. Anyway,
cut them out of your life. There you go.
I'll
say it.
That's what I would do. If a member of my family became a COVID marshal, I'd be deeply ashamed of them, and I wouldn't hesitate to tell them.
To be fair, if I saw one of these people in the street, I would tell them I'm deeply ashamed, regardless whether they're related to me or not. If you are not anything to do with my people, go away.
Well,
you are a truly, genuinely wretched little creature.
Well, there's a war on currently, and it's the government versus the people, and these people have chosen the government. They've chosen their side. They chose not their own people. They chose the government. They chose to be a part of the machine that is tyrannical and harmful, that's been trying to murder us all for decades, that is poisoning our water and our food, that when the pandemic first started, basically told us to stop getting fresh air and exercise. Who does that? Who does that?
Don't get too much fresh air, it's bad for you.
Well, until they came up with that amazing hands, face, replace, or face, space, replace your elderly, open a window, give them pneumonia.
Don't be silly, Joe. It was hands, face, space, replace.
Oh, my bad, I left one out.
It was 4 things. They broke the beans, means, Heinz formula.
Wow.
They went for beans, means, Heinz, please. Because why not?
I see this play. Before we move on, I'm just going to say one last thing on this. I see this playing out. You know those annoying people online who want the world to be a certain way and demand everyone else cuck to their worldview, or else?
Yes.
Or you're a Nazi, or you're a racist, or you're a xenophobe, or you're a this, or name an insult.
Right, so university students, basically.
Or Antifa types, social justice warriors. That's who these people are going to be.
Absolutely.
People who want power and know that they don't have any. People who want the ability, have always wanted the ability, and now crave, desire to have the world be as they want it. And now they have the authority to make that happen. Those are the kind of people's wearing these blue jackets, high-vis vests, whatever you want to call it.
We have to keep in mind as well that at this moment in time, everything is kind of chaotic. The left inherently knows that when there is chaos about, that is a perfect time for them to strike.
Yep.
Chaos is their friend. At this moment in time, there's chaos. We've seen this many, many times in the past.
We'll never waste a crisis, right? They're going to go for the authority wherever they can grab it.
Exactly. Because ultimately, authority is safety, and that's what these people are trying to get to.
This is that same old dilemma, though, isn't it? We talked about this before with the army. A lot of people aren't joining the army now because they disagree fundamentally with everything they're doing. Because they're not now sort of securing, defence of our own country. They're more involved now with interfering with other people's countries, which we fundamentally disagree with. The problem we've got, again, is if you don't join the army, other people will. And those people are going to have guns and training. If we don't become COVID marshals, these nutters, these freaks and weirdos will. And they're going to have authority over you. I'm not suggesting anyone become a COVID marshal. The dirty sellout rats that are wearing these blue jackets are definitely going to be those people I've just mentioned. But if those people are in your life, steer well clear. Or, make a change. Anyway, right, moving on. Let's read the rest of this. On June 21st, the government hopes to lift all remaining restrictions if infection rates and death rates continue to drop across the country. However, 1 in 9 councils across England have confirmed they will continue to use coronavirus marshals beyond June 21st. Of those contacted, Hertfordshire County Council is offering a contract of up to £3 million a year to supply 60 marshals from July 1st until January 31st next year. £3 million a year for 60 marshals.
Romney, $3 million a year for 6 months.
For
So does that mean it's actually 6 million?
I don't know. But if that's for 60 marshals, it's a hell of a lot of money.
Well, when they say to supply, that in and of itself is also a little bit weird. So what that means is are they giving that 3 million to all the district councils?
I don't know. It's vague enough that you have to really guess what that's about.
I have looked into this and I couldn't make heads or tails of it either, but I've just noticed that supply part.
And in addition, it goes on to say the same contract comes with the possibility of an additional year, taking it to 2023. Now, the obvious issue with this is that the taxpayer is going to be paying their wages. So when Hertfordshire County Council is offering a contract of up to 3 million a year, it's your money. So, as you said, we're now paying, again, to be oppressed. We are paying these people to inform on us. We are paying them. And on the tyranny goes. It's never ending.
I'm just trying to find the statement. Statement on the provision of COVID marshals from July 2021. It's basically just what you're reading there.
So equally vague. There's no detail.
No, there's none at all. Not really. The Strategic Coordination Group of the Local Resilience Forum is a collaboration of all public agencies in Hertfordshire and is tasked with ensuring the county is well prepared for all emergencies we may face.
What, like,
other than that, it's basically verbatim what you're reading currently.
All emergencies? What, like people refusing to wear masks?
Extreme wind. The extreme tornado conditions that you get here. You know, this country's renowned for them.
I've got to say, this is not the best journalism in the world, so apologies, chat. The others extending the contracts beyond June 21st are Sunderland City Council and Northumberland Council, while Darlington, Portsmouth, Cornwall and Carlisle councils. And that's the end of the sentence.
Did you break down there, Joe?
So, in order to explain, I'm not satisfied with this explanation, but Jim McManus, Director of Public Health for Hertfordshire County Council, said, "We know that the virus is still circulating and will be for some time." Well, we don't know that, do we? We don't know anything. We know from last year that numbers of infections can change rapidly, and government are very clear that we should plan in case a third wave arises. It would be a dereliction of duty not to prepare for a third wave. That's a nudge. That's putting the idea of a third wave in everyone's heads.
It's also a nudge because it's putting the onus on them that they have to take this action. Their hands are bound. There is nothing they can do. They must do what they're doing.
Yeah, we have to waste your money on something we may not need because we may need it. And it will probably be your fault. So therefore pay up, cheap. Mm-hmm. It's
3 million a year is quite a lot. That's certainly going to make an impact on the council tax bill.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, you know, all of these things that the government have put in place since lockdown began, somebody has to pay for it all. And while I've tried to remain neutral on this kind of young versus old argument that I see constantly bubbling up ever since Brexit, in fact, I do feel terribly sorry for young people because what they're going to inherit is a mountain of debt. They used to complain they'd inherit debt if they went to university or college. They're going to inherit a mountain of debt. And this debt, the thing that really grinds my gears, is all of the time that we've been under lockdown, people have been arriving in our country, legally or otherwise, adding to that debt. If they knew that they were going to borrow so much money and force us through an increase of taxes and various other things to pay this back, they should have shut the borders. They should have said that we are closed. Nobody else gets to enter while the citizens are under stay-at-home orders, and they didn't, because they just truly do not care about us.
You've just kind of reminded me of something. I was kind of having this thought a little bit earlier on, and then I left it alone. I didn't delve into it too much more. Isn't it interesting how the government has basically done whatever the hell they felt like over the past year and a bit? Just completely unchallenged. There is nothing anyone can do to stop them.
Well, there's someone who should be challenging them, but they've been pretty quiet, haven't they?
Well, one sec. He's still a part of the establishment system. He's Starmer, but there is no voice in the media at any stage, as far as I can see, actually calling the government out on this fact. Everyone is so distracted criticising the government for their overall handling of it. As far as I'm aware, at any rate, nobody is questioning whether the government should have the ability to do any of this stuff in the first place.
Well, the only people who are doing it are the people being shut down. But mainstream media, I do agree with you.
This should have sparked a massive conversation over whether government can or cannot do what it is doing. It just should have. There's no way around it. You can't shut the entire economy down, lock people in their homes, put businesses out of business, and then just take on a mountain of debt, and there is not a single question to be had about whether government should be able to do this. That has to be a question people have to start asking. What the government is doing, regardless of the handling of COVID and all the rest of that, this incredible amount of power, the fact that it all resides within a handful of people within government, should this be something we accept going forward?
No, of course not.
Well, obviously you and I don't think so. It's absolute lunacy what they're able to do. There is no checks and balance going on here whatsoever.
The trouble is, unfortunately, as always, people get so blindsided by the
immediate problem.
By the sheer scale of the emergency that they forget to ask the important questions. It's not a case of does the government have the right to do this or not. It's a case of do the people have a say? And at every stage we have not. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to borrow money in your name and present you with a massive debt at the end of a couple of years, I think the least I should do is get your consent. This should have been, as you said, a national discussion. This should have been discussed on every news programme. It should have been discussed everywhere. Mm-hmm. And the government should have consulted the public. And let's not forget, when the lockdown occurred, there was no emergency anyway, because they'd already downgraded the pandemic. So at the time of lockdown, there was plenty of time for them to have a public consultation. Or even, dare I say, a referendum. But it ultimately comes down to, we've said right from the start, they didn't trust us to do the right thing by our loved ones. Like we wouldn't shield our vulnerable and take care of them like we always have. Not only did they not trust us to do this, they never gave us the chance to do this. Like we're all as callous and selfish as they are. They've taken every possible choice away from us during this. And now they're going to stick us with a massive bill for mistakes they've made. And we won't have any choice about that either. But there's no tyranny, right? And we're perfectly free to choose whether or not to pay this bill, right? They won't increase taxes. They won't increase utility bills. They won't increase VAT. They won't rob the pension pot again, will they? Or put prices up, right? None of that's going to happen. They've ripped us out of our families. They've ripped us out of our jobs. They've cost people everything they've ever had, ever worked for. But here's a massive bill. And you're paying for a bunch of people who weren't even in the country when this first started, who we've allowed to arrive since. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And if people aren't incensed by this, and if people even now can't see that this has always been about control, then you are part of the problem. And if you're backing this up and supporting what they're doing, are you any better than the collaborators in their blue jackets?
What was that? I think this needs to be a major part of the conversation going forward.
Of course it does.
I think this should be the main talking point. Who cares whether or not the government is handling this well or not? It is basically irrelevant. It's mental masturbation. The government can do what they want. That's the problem.
Yes.
That's what we need to be tackling.
Well, they don't have the right to do what they've done, and they never had the right, and they never asked for our consent or our permission. They just decided to do it. And those of us who said, hang on a minute, we're not happy with this, they got punished. Mm-hmm. That's tyranny. Sorry, carry on.
No, I said pretty much everything I wanted to say, and then you embellished further very nicely. We've got a problem. The government is excessively powerful. They're able to do whatever the hell they feel like. They've got us distracted with nonsense that doesn't really matter. There's everything. Every week there is some new sort of story that the government doing something wrong and blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. The thing that is very relevant is, should they have the ability to do what they're doing? Forget arguing over the semantics of what they're doing. Just simply cut them off at the knees. Should they be able to do what they're doing? Yes or no?
Yeah.
If we start pinning people down on that, I think we can start making some headway, just in interpersonal conversations. We're probably not going to do it when talking to people on Twitter and various other places like that, but in actual conversations with friends, with family, that could be a way to start making some headway.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, nobody gave them the right to do this. They decided for themselves that they were going to do this. What they have done, aside from the economic destruction of our country, look at what they've done to old people, to children. What they've done in the last 12 months, 14 months, should be a war crime, should be a crime against humanity. The lives they have cost.
It would be a war crime. If this was an actual war, if this was an invading army who had done this, locking people inside their homes, 100% this would be considered a war crime.
Exactly. And
if I remember rightly, when Sarajevo was under siege, they weren't locked in their homes then, were they? They were still able to go out and about. From what I know, the city functioned.
Yeah, but they functioned pretty much like we are. There were rules.
I thought they were able... I thought the city itself, while it was under siege, it was very dangerous, obviously, but they were able to run their shop and what have you.
Yeah, but there were still rules to follow, weren't there, to stay safe?
I don't know, I weren't alive at the time.
It was still no freedom. It was still a gilded cage, because for people to go back to normal, they were taking a massive risk. And while we're not worrying about, shots being fired or bombs being dropped, the human cost of what they've done over the last 14 months will never be forgotten. When people talk about COVID never being forgotten, I don't think of it in those terms. I think of the lockdown, the completely unnecessary lockdown. The cost in human terms of that is disgraceful and should never be forgotten and should never, ever be allowed to happen again.
It should be the example going forward. If you ever let government get out of control, this is what you're going to end up with. And this is now. We have no idea what technology there's going to be over the next 100 years, let alone any further beyond that. We were talking about this earlier on with the automated cars. On the face of it, I used to quite like the idea of automated cars, just because they're cool. The technological aspect of it is quite interesting. The reality of it, though, absolutely horrific. If they've got automated cars, they can control where you go. Take the COVID situation at the moment. They could say you're not allowed into Liverpool. If all the cars on the road are automated, you're not getting to Liverpool. No one's getting in, no one's getting out.
Exactly.
That city is cut off. That is unbelievably dangerous.
And they'll be able to track everywhere you've ever been, everywhere you ever go. They'll be able to disable, essentially, your vehicle on a whim.
We use the example of council tax. Imagine if you owe them 40 quid on council tax. They're just going to say, right, you're not driving anywhere.
Yeah, we'll
or they
disable your
drive
car.
you straight to the office.
I mean, this is why we are pro-decentralisation. There is no time ever that government should have the power that we have seen over the last 14 months.
There's never been a time in history where this has even been possible, let alone done.
Even during wartime, governments didn't extend themselves this much. The amount of overreach has been ridiculous. No government should have this much control over your private business.
Exactly.
And any government, doesn't matter who is in charge, if they have that kind of power, they are corruptible. As we have seen throughout history. This is why, if you want to live in a world where you are free to do the things that you want to do, within reason, obviously, no, not harming anyone else, you cannot have big government, because big government will always end up where we are now. Because the power only grows. And the more you look to the government for answers and solutions, the more power they have over you.
Mm-hmm. I genuinely don't see a way out of this other than the decentralisation and the neutering of government. I just don't see it. I don't believe there is any other option out of this hole that we're in currently.
Well,
and it's not just for us in this country. It's
everywhere.
Us as a species. It's everybody.
Yeah, of course, they're enslaving everyone, and each country might have a slightly different variation on the tyranny, but we'll all be enslaved. If we don't stand up, and if we don't get more people to stand up, if we don't share this message with everyone we can, we are going to be enslaved. There's no two ways about it. Because there are just too many people who will go along with this because they think they've somehow convinced themselves if they just put up with this tyranny for a short time, it will end and the government will give back all that power they took and give us back all the freedom they took. Of course they're not going to. Because the one thing now the government fears more than anything is us turning on them, and rightly so. Why on earth would they give us back the freedom to do things like that? Public opinion has already turned against the government. I hope no one resorts to violence. I genuinely do. But the reality is, public opinion, as far as the government is concerned, is just negative. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about Boris in particular or picking on one person. I'm talking about the whole structure of it. The system
itself.
Yeah.
The system itself has failed.
Governments don't serve people anymore, they just control them.
That's why they're using things like this COVID marshal. This COVID marshal is pure control. There's nothing else to it. It's just trying to control what people do.
And these COVID marshals wouldn't exist if people weren't buying what the government was selling. Mm-hmm. You are never ever going to have ultimate freedom while you've got government. This is why we are so anti-big government. There is no other way this was ever going to play out while we had centralised government. And while it's Boris at the helm now, it could have been anyone. Because
the person at the helm isn't even at the helm.
They're a puppet.
Exactly, they're just a part of the overall machine. The machine itself is fundamentally broken. The machine itself is fundamentally against us. It does not matter whether it's Boris, Starmer, or some other, absolute drongo like bloody wee cranky. It doesn't matter.
Drongo.
I was trying to think of an insult that is good. I was going to call them a womble. I was like, no, I like COVID womble. I'm keeping it for them.
It's true what you say, though. I mean, all of this is decided by people who are far more important than people like Boris.
Well, yeah, like the civil service. I've said it before, the civil service doesn't change. Like, yes, Minister is pretty damn accurate. The civil service simply does not change. They just get promoted. Or if they don't get promoted, they get stuck at a certain level.
Exactly. And if anyone needs reminding, all we've heard since this all began is the Great Reset. The Great Reset. that they instigated. The new normal. The new normal for them is us being controlled completely. I mean, we haven't actually been free for quite some time because you need a license or some kind of pass to do things. You
permission slip from the COVID mark.
Yeah, you need a license to drive. You need a license to fish. Just whatever you do now, you have to ask permission. You want to build something, an extension on your home, you need permission. So
this actually plays into something else that Hertfordshire County Council have done.
what's that?
I came across this morning while looking into the COVID marshal thing. I will actually send you the link. I should have sent this to you earlier. I apologise. It's a very professional show that we run here. I'll read out the headline anyway.
Thank you.
Hertfordshire County Council launches Safe to Trade scheme for Broxbourne hospitality and retail businesses.
Safe to trade. That's ominous.
Exactly. That is a nudge. 100%. Because what that is saying is these businesses are safe to trade. Do you really fancy taking a risk with businesses that are not safe?
How are they safe? What's the criteria? COVID passports or digital
I believe
trust?
because the COVID marshals have gone along and they've okayed them.
Oh, God. Really?
Developed by an expert team of safety practitioners at Shield Safety Group, alongside an independent governance board of the UK's leading food and hospitality safety scientists and professionals. The pilot scheme is free of charge for Broxbourne hospitality and retail businesses. The aim is to get these businesses up and running fast, irony I'll come back to in a moment, as the UK starts to emerge from recent lockdown restrictions, while auditing their COVID safety platform as a way of reassuring customers in the process. The intention is to then roll out the Safe to Trade scheme countrywide later in the year. Bloody hell, that was a long paragraph.
Right, that's definitely going to be part of the digital trust network. And
absolutely, because what they're going to say is, you run this business, you've consistently failed your COVID safety testing, you are not a trustworthy person.
You're not forcing people to wear masks. So therefore you can't be part of the safe group. You're not rocking up in a mask. You're not forcing other people to wear masks. You're serving people who don't wear masks. You're not demanding people are vaccinated. Therefore you're not trusted.
I have a feeling this could be another episode in and of itself. Just all these little schemes that they're setting up.
Who's funding that scheme? Us?
Oh, we'll find out.
So basically another shady government agency, essentially.
Probably. We'll look into this. We'll find out how they're getting their money, considering it's free. There's probably some sort of grant that they've been able to get off the local council or something. Who knows?
Well, then it's not free. We've paid for it. So,
exactly.
So nothing in life is free. Everything you want that has value must be earned. And the way I see, I'm going to call it a scamdemic right now. And here's what I see.
Allegedly.
No, I'm going to call it a scamdemic. But hear me out. So many scams have popped up since this began. The amount of taxpayer money that's been wasted on test and trace and various other initiatives that have either fallen away or been repurposed. The amount of scams involving politicians and their spouses, involved in mask production and antibacterial hand wash. When people call it a scamdemic, I know they had another reason for saying it, but it is a scamdemic because this has been a way to scam the British taxpayer through one crazy cowboy idea after another. Absolutely ridiculous. And the latest scam, COVID marshals that we're paying for that we may or may not need. Well, we know we don't need them. Till 2023. These rat collaborators. Government informants.
Well said. People
who should stand with us but have chosen instead to stand against us and report us to the authorities. For the crime of what? breathing fresh air.
For the crime of being normal.
We're not free.
For the crime of not behaving in a way that they deem good. We're being punished basically for not virtue signalling hard enough.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much a live and let live kind of person, me. If you don't bother me, I won't bother you. Unfortunately, everyone else isn't getting the memo. And if that were to happen, if everyone just left everyone else alone, if all the freaks and the weirdos wanted to be all freaky and weird in their own little community and leave the rest of us alone and keep their hands off our children, I'd say have at it. Go and do it. You won't last long. And that's your choice. Live and let live. And by the same token, you leave me to live my life the way I want to, in a healthy, wholesome way, with standards and values and morals. That would be a way for us all to get along. But they can't have it, can they? It's like the world is on fire.
It's like they're jealous. They're jealous of normal people.
Well, they're on a path of self-destruction and they have to take the rest of us with them.
Exactly.
It's going to be, I think, the next few months are going to be really difficult. A lot of difficult decisions are going to have to be made by all of you, really. The kind of people you want in your life, the kind of life you want to lead. If ever there was a time, though, to take a stand, to be true to what you want for the future, now is that time. It really is. But we can't stay in tiny little groups and think we have a hope in hell of achieving anything. We have to spread the word, we have to spread the message, we have to talk to people. We have to we don't even have to convince anyone. We just have to find other people who already know what's going on. That's the real job at hand now. Finding those people and bringing them all together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're not free. We haven't been free for a long time. And if the new normal is enslavement, I'll pass, thanks. I don't want it. We have to create our own new normal. Living as free men and women. What a remarkable thought that we have to actually plan this somehow, that we have to challenge the authorities to have the right to do that. It really is a crazy time to be alive.
It's history repeating itself.
Yeah, well. It's never going to end unless we end it. And things aren't going to change unless we change them. It's up to us now, isn't it? It's up to each and every one of us. All we can do is keep talking to each other, communicating with each other, working with each other, supporting each other. It really is going to come down to us and them, I think, in the end, don't you?
Definitely. We desperately need to just talk more with friends and family.
Yeah.
Just start pushing the idea and start getting them to push it as well. Once you've got someone and you know they're on board, you know they're normal, start pushing them to talk to more people. Start trying to build and grow that way. Because this doesn't end well for any of us. This isn't... There's no coming out of this and everything is going to be okay and go back to normal. They are correct about that. There is no old normal. We're going in towards something new, and something new can either be something we like and something that benefits us, or it can be something that they like and something that crushes us. There's no other option.
You have to think of it this way. This is a sinking ship, and the conformists are sabotaging the lifeboats, or rather, they have access to them. The group that has the biggest numbers will have access to the lifeboats. That can be us or it can be them. If it's us, we'll use them. If it's them, they'll destroy them. The ship will go down. Do we really want to be on it when it happens? I know I don't. I want to be safe in my community with wonderful people who also believe in freedom. It is tempting as well to get kind of desperate when you talk to people. I would suggest that you just start by showing them something like this story. We'll post links. Ask people, well, why are they paying COVID marshals for another 2 years? Why are they still controlling us after this ends? If the pandemic was the reason for the control, then when the pandemic and the lockdown ends, then the control should end, right? Mm-hmm. It clearly isn't going to.
So this is a really, really good opportunity just to get people to say, yeah, the government is corrupt. Because as soon as you get people to start saying that, it's a very small leap between, yes, with this COVID marshal thing, the government is corrupt, to maybe the entire thing has a stench of corruption.
Yeah.
How much money are they actually making out of this COVID lockdown?
And everyone has a weak point, and I don't mean this in the way that might have sounded. If you can get people to question one thing, they'll start to question lots of things. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'll start to question everything. Find the thing that you know someone is passionate about and expose it. Just that one thing. Just focus on that one thing.
Now that would be a good conversation. How do we find these parts?
Because especially if it's people that you care for, because you'll know them better than anyone, and you'll know. I hate to use this word. You know what will trigger them, and I'm triggered. But it's true. You just focus on one thing that you know they're passionate about, or even if it's something you're not particularly interested in. If they have raised any skepticism about even one single issue that's arisen over the last 14 months, years, it feels like years.
It does feel like years, aren't you, that?
Jump on it. Use it to your advantage. And then maybe you can slide a couple of other issues into the conversation. While they're in skepticism mode, throw something else in there, and then something else. We really have failed at waking people up. And I still think that people think there is all the time in the world. There just isn't. So we're going to keep finding this information, and we're going to keep sharing it. That's our role. That's our duty to you. What we're going to ask you to do in exchange is to share this message with people you know. Get them to watch the podcast. Get them to come on a stream. If each of you brought one person, just one, and that person brought one, imagine the growth. We need to push back. The government need to know we are not having it. And they're not going to know if we're all sitting quietly, isolated, separate, just talking to ourselves. We need to be talking to each other. We need to be doing things together. And just like you mentioned on your article, we need to be hosting events wherever we're in a position to, that are maskless. Doesn't have to be compulsory. It's not mandatory attendance. If people turn up, you know that they're on board. There are things that we can do individually. There are things we can do as a community. But if we do not communicate with people outside of our community, we will not grow. Mm-hmm. And we need to grow. There is strength in numbers. The time really is now.
The time's now because it's probably easier than it's ever been.
Of course it is. We've never had so much material to work with.
Exactly. Like, nobody likes the government. This is perfect.
Every government U-turn is out there. It's in the media. And although they, as Jordan said, they've not been challenging the governments, they have been reporting on these U-turns. It's all there in black and white.
Your average person can read the headlines and say, wait, something doesn't quite add up. This is all a little bit too much. That little tiny bit of doubt that everybody has in their mind, that's basically what we need to lash on to. Just what part of the story, what part of the narrative are they doubting? And
let people know you have doubts too. It will make an enormous difference in getting them to open up to you. Let them lead the conversation and just agree with them. Anyway, some food for thought there. Yeah, that was very interesting, the COVID marshals. So there you go. Government informers coming to a village near you. Everyone just be very careful, be very cautious, always be safe. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Take care.
Indeed. See you next time.